When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Welcome to Red Light Therapy, a revolutionary technology perfected by NASA to aid in muscle strengthening and recovery. Red and infrared light has the capacity to penetrate deep into the cell's mitochondria, potentially leading to increased energy, faster recovery, and the optimal performance your body demands. Train, fight, recover.
The viewpoint, statements, or beliefs expressed on the following program by the host, guests, or callers are not necessarily the opinions of FantasyXS.com, Media Group Inc., ownership, management, sponsors, or website.
The storm is now making sure.
The Miami Hurricanes Watch with host Mike McCoy is on. The Watch is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Shobe. Time for hardcore Miami Hurricanes talk. Here's your host, Mike McCoy.
The turnover team and the Miami defense and how they swarm and how they run and how great they are. And yeah, I'm fucking sick of it. I'm sick of it. You go out tonight and you show the world what this fucking group is all about. You hear me? They can have the chain. We get in the fucking ring. Turnover team and the Miami.
Oh, man, I love that clip. Isn't it funny? Isn't it so funny? You guys remember that when Notre Dame came down to scrimmage Miami in that nationally televised, practice, I guess you could say, or scrimmage, like I said, in 2017? Remember that? You know who that was? That's Mike Elko. That was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator. I'm tired of the fucking ring. I'm tired of the chain. We'll have the fucking ring. We know how that turned out. That same guy is now the head coach at Duke, so he's going to come in with some fire. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy, what is today, Tuesday, October 18th. You are listening or watching Miami Hurricanes Watch with your host, me, Mike McCoy, on the 305 Sports Talk Network. And good to have you. Finally, nice to talk about a win again. Been a while since we've been able to do that. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited, even though it's only 3-3. I get it. But after two games, one of them being a loss against North Carolina, you're kind of starting to see things take shape, kind of slowly but surely starting to take shape. Some things, not everything. Rome wasn't built in a day, and that's what we're trying to get to. And by the way, why do I have on my gear with the buckets? No, it's not college basketball season. It's still football season, but it's that perfect time of year where you get the major league playoffs. Basketball preseason just ended. Football season's going on, but today is day one of the NBA season. So got my buckets hat on. I always got to rep. I'm a hooper. Football's my first love, but I'm a hooper. So yeah, that's that. And so good news for Canes basketball. It's not a Canes basketball show, but good news for Canes basketball for the last few days. And but in any event, welcome, good evening. Got a lot to get to. Got a guest in the next segment. Got Levon Ponder calling in to share his thoughts on where the state of Miami is right now in terms of the Mario Cristobal era, and getting his opinion on how the defense looked, because the defense is doing its thing. And I kind of want to talk about that. So let's start there with their performance last Saturday versus the Virginia Tech Hokies coming out with a 20-14 win. Miami scoring 17 points in the first half, only 3 points in the second half, those coming in the third quarter by way of an Andy Borregales field goal. But excuse me, that defense sure as hell looked good. You want to know one thing about the defense that's lovely? One thing about the defense that kind of sort of resembles old school Miami teams? Did you know that Miami leads the nation at getting to the quarterback with just 4 guys without having to blitz? That kind of makes you think, then why is the secondary still look kind of shaky if we don't need a fifth guy to blitz? I don't know. But you know what? That's a good question. I'm going to go ahead and ask the coaches next week at a press conference. I'm going to do that. I wasn't able to get to them today, but I will do that the next time they're available. But yeah, man, Miami's creating pressure with just 4 guys, and they shut out the Virginia Tech Hokies for the first 3 quarters of the game. Virginia Tech scored their only points in the fourth quarter, 14 points, and Miami, they made us sweat, but they come out with a 20-14 victory. Listen, I was a little bit underwhelmed after the game. All right, I'm not one to complain about victories. I wish they would have looked a lot cleaner finishing that game. But you want to know what? They needed a win, and I don't care if they won by a half a point. They got it done. Right. So 3-3, Mario Cristobal gets his first conference victory as a Miami Hurricane head coach. And just some stats I want to share with you guys. Nothing new, but still relevant. So Tyler Van Dyke continues his torching ways through the air, 29 of 46, threw the ball 46 times. Gosh, that's almost 100 times. Well, he threw the ball 57 times last week. I'm no math major. Let me put on my calculator. 57 plus 46, 103 times. 103 times in 2 games. That is not the balance that we want. It's not the balance that Miami fans want, Miami coaches want. Heck, that's not the balance that Tyler Van Dyke wants. How do I know that? Because a quarterback needs a running game. A quarterback wants a running game. You don't want to be predictable on offense. But you know what? 29 of 46, 351, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, right? QBR of 74.1. The running game still leaving a lot to be desired. Only 107 yards on the ground on Saturday. Jalen Knighton was your leading rusher, a whopping 27 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. Thad Franklin, 4 carries, 24 yards. Lucius Stanley, 4 carries for 23 yards. That guy is Damian Berry Jr. I promise he's Damian Berry 2.0. You guys remember Damian Berry? He did put Miami on his back. Remember that game when Miami went into UNC at Chapel Hill and they were wearing all black? They being UNC was wearing all black. The same game where Miami made Eric Ebron a first-round draft pick because he lit it up. That's a game that Tracy Howard, I think he had like 2 interceptions, maybe 3. But Damian Berry put that team on his back and said, give me the rock. Let's go. He won the game for Miami. One day it was a Thursday night game, Al Golden era. He reminds me, Lucius Perry reminds me of Damian Berry. Just look at how they run. Receiving-wise, Colby Young, 9 catches, 110 yards, and a tutty. How about that? Dude's coming up to be looking like the number 1 receiver that Miami fans have been expecting for a very long time. I don't care who was doing it. I don't think you care who was doing it, as long as somebody was doing it. Damn it, right? 9 catches, 110 yards. Not sure how many targets, but the highlight of the game had to be that one-handed catch down the right sideline that he just wow, how did he catch? It was a great catch. Longer 37 yards. The other touchdown came from Frank Ladson. About time we got to see Frank because he came in with a lot of hype. Came out of South Dade Senior High School, going into Clemson with a lot of hype, and transferred to Miami, coming home with a lot of hype. He had 5 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. So, again, Miami defense played well, man, and I kind of want to talk about why did it let up? It seemed to let up. I don't think Virginia Tech was doing anything different. I really don't think that they were surprising Miami. I think kind of the same things have plagued Miami in the past couple games, just not knowing how to finish and not knowing, just mental lapses. They had some really bad penalties at extended drives, one of them being to Corey Couch. The hell are you doing, 23? You know better than that. And I'm surprised that Mario didn't get into that ass. I'm surprised he didn't dig into that ass when Corey Couch hit the whoever it was out of bounds late, because it was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you, right? The only thing, I was just waiting for it to happen. I was waiting for it to happen remember when Mario on national TV last year blew up on their Oregon receiver after spiking the ball after getting a first down? I was waiting for it to happen, but he didn't do it. So while we were at walk-ons on watching the game, Big O brought up that, maybe he's not doing that because he kind of knows that if he, digs into that ass how he wants to or how he normally would, that they might be a little bit mental, fragile. Who knows? That's totally skeptical, right? But it's a possibility. And then, if you get into a guy's head, you mess with whatever confidence he was working with, and then behind him you probably don't have much. So Big O's point was he probably knows his team to the point that, let me not mess with this guy too much because I don't know how much he can handle, But in any event, I wanted to talk about the defensive performance, and I want you to hear what Mario had to say on their defensive performance versus Virginia Tech. He was asked about that at the press conference. What's today? Tuesday? So yesterday, he was asked about it when the coaches were made available to the media. First, Coach Mario comes up. Coach Cristobal comes up. Then it's Coach Gaddis. Then it's Coach Steele. So here's Mario on the defensive performance versus Virginia Tech in last week's win.
But it's a really good football team. Obviously, it starts up front. Their offensive line has done a good job blocking for both their quarterback and their running backs. They do a lot of stuff up front. They'll pin and pull you inside zone, outside zone, gap schemes. Their offensive line, they play together. Very smart group of guys. You could tell that they've gelled really well. Not sure exactly how much time they have spent together, but they do a really good job. And their running back, he creates stuff as well. He really sets up runs.
Sorry about that. I was texting our guest. We're going to have Levon Ponder join us. He was just letting us know that he's going to be a little bit late. So his segment's going to normally start at 8:20, but he'll be on at 8:30. Sorry about that. So, you heard what Mario was saying there. And let me go back to the box score real quick. So, again, the defensive performance for Miami, they did great. 179 yards on the through the air, right? Only allowed 78 on the ground. Miami was dominant, and that's what you expected. Wouldn't it have sucked for as crappy as Virginia Tech has been playing all season long, 2-4 entering the game, that Miami would have looked, and I get it, they didn't look ultra impressive how Miami thought. My final score prediction was 27-17. I was not that far off. I was a touchdown away from Miami, and I was a field goal away from Virginia Tech hitting that mark. But a lot of people were expecting for Miami to go over 30, and I get it. The guest that we had on from The Athletic, forgive me that I cannot remember his name, shame on me, but in the pregame show last week, obviously before the game, he was saying Miami 30, Virginia Tech 20. There's a lot of people, thinking that. I forgot what the spread was, but again, a win is a win, and that's how you build. You can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. Oh my God, but what about USC? Yeah, what about USC? They kind of had a guy by the name of Jordan Addison transfer over. He just so happened to be the Biletnikoff winner last season, transferred to USC. That's part of why part of why their offense is doing well. I don't know. Lincoln Riley, I don't know, a mastermind on offense, kind of was able to take his quarterback with him from OU. In my opinion, Caleb Williams is probably a top 3 quarterback when he was playing like a top 3 quarterback last year. That kind of has something to do with it. Mario didn't really have that. He didn't have skilled players transfer over from his system in Oregon like that. He did have 2 offensive linemen, and I want to talk about that because the 2 offensive linemen that transferred over from Oregon with him that followed Coach Mirabal and Coach Cristobal, they started at center, Jonathan Dennis. I expected more. Honestly expected more at center because that's a guy that I thought could have started. I knew that he wasn't going to start because Ja'Kai Clark is that dude. But Jonathan Dennis, he's a guy that I thought he would have started or was going to push to start. But after his performance, you kind of saw why. There was a clip there that I saw that he got just straight manhandled. It was on a run play. Go figure. It was on a run play, and Miami was bringing the ball. I think it was who was it? I think it was Knighton that lined up on the right side of on the right hip of TVD. And then they were coming up to the left side, and the play would have been there had Dennis not been blown back big time. And it's like, whoa, every other block was made except that one. And he was bull rushed by one guy. Just weird. Logan Sagapolo is the other new starter that started in place of Justice Oluwaseun, number 70, at right guard. He left a little to be desired as well. I expect a little bit more from him. But look, everything is well, let me not say everything's new to them because it isn't. They know the blocking schemes. They know the running schemes. So I don't know what the issue is there. But still, it's some getting used to in terms of, I guess, new teammates, communication issues, whatever the case is. But Zion Nelson, that's a guy that is not going to be joining Miami for a while. And really quick before we end this segment, I want to bring Mario back on a clip from Monday when he was asked about injuries. He kind of listed off some guys that are going to be available this week, might be available this week, and won't be available this week, and won't be available for a while. So here's Mario on injuries when asked yesterday on when can we expect some guys back. Take a listen. Sorry about that. Their guys are pulling up the clip, and they'll let me know in the little chat here that we have going on when it's ready. But again, some guys you might be surprised about. I think he mentioned Jacoby George is one of the guys that's possibly ready to come back. I know that everybody knows about Arroyo. He's not expected back anytime soon. I think he's actually out for this season, if I'm not mistaken. Ja'Kai Clark. Zion Nelson is going to be a while, and I think they have the clip ready. Here's Mario on injuries.
Long-term guys, I guess, like Don Chaney, Xavier.
Don Chaney, I think, is still 4 weeks away. He still has some time. Who else did you mention? Restrepo. I think the last check was 2.5 weeks out from possible return. So who else?
Jacoby and Zion.
Jacoby's got a chance to return this week. Jacoby George. Zion, we're taking it slow. The other one would be Justice Oluwashun. His is a little bit more significant, so he'll miss time. Tyreek looks really good. Ja'Kai looks really good. Henry Parrish looks good. Keyshawn looks good. So might as well jump out in front of that, And congrats to Akeem Mesidor for being, Player of the Week nationally defensively, doing a great job.
I got one more.
You heard him there. Ja'Kai Clark didn't play last week, but he looks like he's ready to go. Good news about Tyreek Stevenson was also in street clothes. He wasn't available last week. Who else did he mention? Jacoby George, that'll be a much needed playmaker. You saw what he's capable of doing in the open field. Almost scored a touchdown had he not got tripped up versus Texas A&M. Shook a guy out of his boots. And it was impressive to watch. The dude is electric in the open field. A guy that a lot of people thought could fight to be Miami's #1 receiver. That's how good he was looking, or that's how talented, and that was the expectation for him, right? And one of those South Florida skilled receivers that was, coveted by a bunch of people. That he's that dude. He is that dude. Doesn't have the size that you want, the 6'2", 6'3" Andre Johnson or Kobe Young type of size, but is a nifty guy with the ball in his hands, runs routes really well, and he's explosive. He's just one of those guys that just give me the ball in the open field, coach. Just give me the ball in the open field. And so there's another another statement I wanted to get to before we move on to the next segment. And actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that for the third segment. I'm going to go ahead and leave that for the third segment because we got to talk about Duke. We got to talk about Duke, which is Miami's next opponent. That's an opponent that, listen, it's not your granddad's Duke football team. Let's just put it that way. Mike Elko has them playing. Okay, their record may not seem like it, but that doesn't mean, listen, Miami is in no position to overlook anybody. They're just not that yet, okay? But shouts out to Akeem Mesidor. You heard Coach mention him there. The Walter Camp National Player of the Week, okay? And was earned that after his performance, 3.5 sacks. Not tackles, sacks, okay? See, 3.5 sacks, 8 tackles. The dude is it. West Virginia transfer. He's from Canada, born in Canada, but he played his high school football down here, if I'm not mistaken. Forget the high school. But listen, again, that defensive line. Remember who's coaching that defensive line? Okay, Rod Wright, who played over with the Longhorns. All right, and this is when the Texas Longhorns were kicking ass and taking names in the Big 12. Mac Brown was there. All right, he along with Jason Taylor. Remember that Jason Taylor is actually coaching the defensive ends, and Mesidor is playing primarily on the end, right? So there's no coincidence there. They're getting coached up. They're seeing the fruits of that labor pay off, and it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see. I just wish that it kind of translated over to the secondary, because when you have a front four that's getting to the quarterback without help, 9 times out of 10, your secondary is looking good or better than what Miami's is. So that's just weird to me. And again, I'm gonna make it a point to ask the coaches that next week during the press conference. But again, shout out to Akeem Mesidor, and I don't remember if I mentioned it last week, but shouts out to Tyler Van Dyke for earning ACC Quarterback of the Week last week, 2 weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen, that he is doing his thing, his aerial assaults for the Canes. So now's the time for a good break. I'm a little bit past due, but it's all right. We'll get through the show. Like I said, we're expecting Levon Ponder, former Miami Hurricane safety, number 35 from Miami Pace Senior High School right here in Miami, Florida-Dade County. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Miami Hurricanes Watch on the 305 Sports Talk Network.
You're listening to the home for hardcore Miami Hurricanes coverage. This is the Miami Hurricanes Watch with Mike McCoy on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
Red Recover now offers a simple-to-use, professional-grade light therapy device designed to help your dog heal and live a healthier life. Red Recover emits red and infrared light therapy based on the same science that NASA developed, all in a soft, flexible housing pad powered by a convenient, rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Say yes to science and give your dog the care it deserves with Red Recover.
If you're a Miami sports fan, then there's only one store to go to, and that's Caneswear at Miami Fanwear in Davie. They're your one-stop shop for all your inner Miami CF, Canes, Dolphins, Panthers, and Marlins merchandise. They have hats, t-shirts, game day jerseys, and so much more. Located at 2511 South University Drive in Davie, and open 24/7 online at caneswear.com or innermiamiwear.com. Call them at 954-835-5597. Caneswear, the spot where inner Miami and all Miami sports fans shop.
You're locked into the only platform truly dedicated to South Florida sports. This is the Miami Hurricanes Watch on the Sports Talk 305 Network. Here's your host, Mike McCoy.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for sticking around with us throughout that last break. You're listening to the Miami Hurricanes Watch, or watching the Miami Hurricanes Watch here on the Sports Talk 305 Network. I'm your host. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. We're waiting on Levon Ponder to join us. Levon Ponder, for those of you who do not remember, played for Miami. And let me pull it up here. I'm sorry. I definitely should have had this in front of me. And I did, actually. I did. I just I switched screens. Like, what the hell? So played with Miami from, I believe it was 05 to 08. I'm going to pull that up to make sure right now. So actually it was, 04, 05, 06, and 07. Again, safety, 6 foot, 220 pounder from Monsignor Pace Senior High School right here in Hialeah. A guy that was a playmaker. And there's a little clip that I wanted to share with you guys. I'm going to wait for Sean and Stanley to get that up. Of a Virginia game, an away game, in which, remember that 08 class, Ja'Cory Harris, Aldarius Johnson, that Northwestern crazy class, which helped Miami result in a number 1 recruiting class that didn't do crap on the field. All right. Arthur Brown was a quarterback from, a linebacker, the number 1 linebacker in the country. He may have been the number 1 player overall in the country. I cannot recall. I can't put my hang that for sure. But I definitely know he's the number 1 linebacker in the country. He signed Sean Spence. You name it. Tommy Streeter, everybody. And, nothing came of it. But in any event, it was exciting times where he was teammates with all of those guys. So there's a clip that I wanted to share that maybe to kind of bring back a little bit of memories. There was a game that was being played at Virginia, and Virginia was driving late in the fourth quarter, driving, and Levon Ponder saved the day. So here's a clip of him doing exactly that. at Virginia. Take a look. I actually don't remember the clip. I remember the game. I remember that highlight. I was probably maybe because I was losing my mind, jumping all around all over the place because Miami was on the verge of losing that game had Virginia scored. But we're still waiting. We're still waiting on Levon. He told me he would be able to make it around 8:30, which is right about now. So Levon, man, we're waiting on you. But what I do want to talk about, since there was a little bit of a technical difficulty in that first segment playing the clip, we actually played the wrong clip for you. I apologize about that. But I wanted to get to what Coach had to say defensively. I'm sorry, what Coach had to say about the defensive performance last week versus Virginia Tech. He liked how they started. We all did. Shut out Virginia for the first 3 quarters. But there is just some things that you cannot have happen if you want to be a great team. Not a good team, a great team. And what comes with being a great team? Consistency. So here is Mario Cristobal talking about the defense when asked about what he liked, what he didn't like on Monday yesterday.
How did you feel about the defensive performance? The longest play given up was 27 yards, which obviously was way down from the previous couple.
Well, I really liked it when it was 20-0, and then we came a little bit out of sorts. We helped them sustain 2 drives with really unnecessary penalties, right? Immature penalties that must be eliminated for us to be really successful. But I don't want to focus on the negative part. You had a really good question. They played very well up front. Were able to take control of the line of scrimmage, put pressure on the quarterback. We were much more, snug up in our coverage as well. Our rules and playing them out and our communication has improved as well. And it'll be tested this week because this week you go against an offensive line that has run the ball better than anybody else in the conference. They have protected the quarterback better than anybody else in the conference, and they have a dynamic quarterback. So all that stuff will be tested.
Pass rush, obviously.
You heard it there. And listen, Miami's going to need that because, again, this is not, your granddad's or your dad's Duke football team. And I get it. They're still not, world beaters. They're 5th in the ACC. They're 4-3 overall. But just a little example of what Duke did last week. They almost beat UNC. Miami almost beat UNC. That's, UNC 6-1 right now, 3-0 in the conference. But Duke put up points, and I get it. It's not hard to put up points against UNC, but still, 35-38. They scored in every quarter except the third quarter. They scored 14 points in the all-important fourth quarter, and they were a field goal away from tying it and sending it to overtime. But here's somebody that I want to talk about, and that is Riley Leonard, their quarterback, Riley Leonard. And we're still waiting on Levon Ponder to join us. If you're just now joining the show, thanks for tuning in to the Miami Hurricanes Watch on the 305 Sports Talk Network. I'm your host, Mike McCoy. And you know what? If Levon Ponder doesn't get to join us in this segment, hopefully he'll get to join us in the third segment, which is normally reserved when I like to talk about the opponent coming up. And, of course, we get into the 3 real McCoys of the week. But hopefully he'll join us that. But if not, I like to talk. So Riley Leonard, guys, if you don't know who he is, start to pay attention because this kid can play. He's a quarterback. He's like, I don't want to call him, the only weapon for Duke, but he's kind of in a sense – not kind of in a sense. He's super important to that offense. This is how important he is to that offense. Duke lost by 3 points to UNC, right? 38-35. How important or how different would that score would have been if he did not play? Why do I say that? The guy only threw for 245 yards, threw for a touchdown, threw an interception. He was 20 of 31. Get this. You want to know why he only threw for 245 yards? He ran for 130 on 14 carries. That's another running back. That's another guy. You know how it is with Miami plays, a mobile quarterback. It's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass. Oh, also, he scored a touchdown on the ground. So 2 total touchdowns on the day. All right. His leading receiver, Calhoun, had 6 catches for 55 yards. And so, they can play. All right. They can play. The score at the half was 21-17. They were up. They're up. UNC came out, like gangbusters in the third quarter, scored 14 points in that third stanza, and then they capped it off with a 7-point fourth quarter. And then Duke, of course, 0 points in the third, which is probably where they lost the game. I wasn't watching it, but they scored 14 in the third. These guys can do it all. And you heard what Coach Cristobal had to say about them. They're a very – actually, I was going to save that clip for the third segment. I'm going to go ahead and play it now. Hopefully Vaughn can join us in that last segment where we're talking about the real McCoys, and then we'll get his input on the team as a whole. And I want to talk about college football in general. It was an awesome weekend. But here's a clip on Mario talking about the Duke Blue Devils and what to expect. Again, not your granddad's Duke football team. These guys, they're scrappers. And again, remember who their head coach is. Mike Elko. He's going to come into town. That same coach that we played the clip in the beginning of the show, when he was at midfield on 27 in 2017 at The Rock, talking to his defense. He was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, and he's going to come in with a little chip on his shoulder because we made that defense look like shit. Hey, what was the score in that game? 41-8. It was over at the half after Trajan Bandy made that pick six. It was probably even before that pick six, but I knew Miami was going to win that game in the first defensive series because Miami. Everybody knows what the Hurricanes look like when they're playing like Hurricanes. You notice it on the first drive, whether it be offense or defense. You know it when you see it. And Miami, it's the last time Miami came out playing like Hurricanes. Because Miami comes out playing like Hurricanes, hide your kids. Hide your wives, hide your kids. It's over. Like, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants that. Well, nobody wants to smoke. Nobody wants to smoke. And that's what they came out playing like. But again, I'm getting excited. I was at that game. But here's Coach talking about what he expects from Duke, how much he respects Duke, how balanced they are, and how much he respects Riley Leonard as a quarterback. Take a listen.
Tells you that you really need to prepare to start doing things again.
Well, it's a really good football team. Obviously, it starts up front. Their offensive line has done a good job blocking for both their quarterback and their running backs. They do a lot of stuff up front. They'll pin and pull you inside zone, outside zone, gap schemes. Their offensive line, they play together. Very smart group of guys. You could tell that they've gelled really well. Not sure exactly how much time they have spent together, but they do a really good job. And their running back, he creates stuff as well. He really sets up runs well, and he has the ability to put a foot in the ground and reverse the field. Their quarterback is an exceptional player. I mean, I really feel that strongly about him. He can make the tight window throws. He could take off with the football. When it's not there, he can extend plays. He's very smart. He doesn't make mistakes. Very balanced offense. Their defense, they have a really good grasp of their scheme. You don't see guys out of place. You see guys playing hard, creating turnovers. I think from a turnover margin standpoint, they're tops in the conference. To get guys on the ground, I mean, they really had an opportunity to close out last week's game in a strong fashion, albeit a penalty prevented that from happening. So all in all, just really impressed with watching them on film.
Yeah. Again, listen, in ideally you want to, and again, it's not that they're a great team, but they're a well-coached team. How many times have you seen the team with less talent win a game because they're well-coached? And that's what I call Notre Dame. And I know we're talking about Duke, but let me tell you what I mean. All right. I'm trying to connect the dots here. Notre Dame, yes, they recruit and they have national top 10 classes year after year after year after year. And everybody wants to talk about how Miami's overrated every year and how USC's overrated every year and Texas and all that stuff. What about Notre Dame? What about Notre Dame? And I'm getting to my point. Just give me a second. But Duke is a well-coached team, much like Notre Dame, in the sense that, okay, this year, Duke is like that high school football team that doesn't have a lot of athletes, all right, because they don't. Not to say that they have no athletes. I said they don't have a lot of athletes, but they got that smart quarterback that's well-coached. They got that offensive line that's well-coached. They don't make mistakes, and they will beat you because they're technically sound. I'm sorry, but that's going to go a long way, especially if you have guys that are buying in. And listen, programs like Duke, Wisconsin, Iowa, these are programs that are good every third and fourth year. Why? Because they're not good enough to leave when they're redshirt sophomores? What is it that the NFL won't take you? You're not eligible to be drafted unless you're Maurice Claret trying to break the rules or change the rules. They won't draft you until you're 2 years removed. Is it 2 years removed or 3 years removed from your high school graduating class? They're not good enough to do that. So they stick around till they're juniors, redshirt juniors, seniors, redshirt seniors, or in this case, you get a COVID year, you could be fifth year, 6-year guy. So what does that mean? Their chemistry is on point. That's Duke this year. They will beat you because they're good coaches. And they have a pretty good staff. I'm going to go ahead and talk about that staff on the other side of the segment. Just got word LaVon Ponder won't be joining us. Maybe we can get him for next week. Damn it, Vaughn. The hell's your problem? But again, a solid guy, solid player. Don't put LaVon in a box. That's a guy that can hoop. He can hoop because we've had some really good hoop conversation. He played high school basketball over at Monsignor Pace. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry. But I'm going to go ahead and take a break here. We'll come back in the final segment. We're going to continue the Duke conversation, what Miami has to do to win that game, what they cannot do what they cannot do so they can help themselves in winning that game, what to expect from Duke. We'll go over some stats, and we'll take a little trip around college football, and of course the three McCoys. So we'll be back on the other side of the break. Thanks for listening to Miami Hurricanes Watch. I'll see you on the other side.
You're listening to the home for hardcore Miami Hurricanes coverage. This is the Miami Hurricanes Watch with Mike McCoy on the Sports Talk 305 network.
Red Recover now offers a simple-to-use, professional-grade light therapy device designed to help your dog heal and live a healthier life. Red Recover emits red and infrared light therapy based on the same science that NASA developed, all in a soft, flexible housing pad powered by a convenient, rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Say yes to science and give your dog the care it deserves with Red Recover.
If you're a Miami sports fan, then there's only one store to go to, and that's Caneswear at Miami Fanwear in Davie. They're your one-stop shop for all your inner Miami CF, Canes, Dolphins, Panthers, and Marlins merchandise. They have hats, t-shirts, game day jerseys, and so much more. Located at 2511 South University Drive in Davie, and open 24/7 online at caneswear.com or innermiamiwear.com. Call them at 954-835-5597. Caneswear, the spot where inner Miami and all Miami sports fans shop.
You're locked into the only platform truly dedicated to South Florida sports. This is the Miami Hurricanes Watch on the Sports Talk 305 network. Here's your host, Mike McCoy.
Fellas, ladies, gentlemen, good morning, good evening, wherever you're listening to us, watching us. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. This can obviously be downloaded at any time of the day, so hence the good morning part. But as of right now, it is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. My birthday's coming up. My birthday's on Sunday. And we're entering the last segment. You're listening to Miami Hurricanes Watch on the 305 Sports Talk Network, powered by the Big O. Thanks for Sean and Chad holding things down in the background. Had a nice little gridiron roundtable before this show last hour from 7 to 8, where you get to listen to talk from the beat writers from the Seminoles, the Canes, and the Gators. So, big time college football talk before this show every week on Tuesday. And then, of course, if you want to stick around for Miami Hurricanes talk, where we kind of get in depth about the home team, that's what I'm here for. Again, thanks for joining us. We had LaVon Ponder scheduled. I'm glad I didn't tweet it out because that would have sucked, right? But whoever's listening right now, I apologize. Hopefully he'll be able to join us next week. But always like to have a guest on, and he, wasn't able to make it. Things pop up, but it's okay because we got enough content to get it through. So this segment, I want to talk about what to expect from Duke, what Miami's got to do, what to expect from Miami. We're going to take a trip around college football, and of course the three real McCoys. So let's start off with Duke. Some familiar names on that coaching staff. some familiar names that Miami Hurricanes fans should really be familiar with because these guys were around just as early as last season, right? So again, we'll start with the head coach, Mike Elko. Former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, was the defensive coordinator when Notre Dame came down to scrimmage Miami on that nationally televised beautiful Saturday afternoon in November of 2017 where Miami kicked that ass 41-8, I believe it was. I think we scored again. But he was the defensive coordinator of that team, right? And for those of you that didn't catch it in the first segment, I love this clip. And credit to Will Manzo because he's the one that originally tweeted it. The clip went viral, but apparently Mike Elko was sick of the turnover chain. Listen to what he had to say.
The turnover chain and the Miami defense and how they swarm and how they run and how great they are. And yeah, I'm fucking sick of it. I'm sick of it. You go out tonight and you show the world what this fucking group is all about. You hear me? They can have the chain. We get in the fucking ring. The turnover.
I'm sorry, but it's funny. I mean, it was an impassioned speech. Like, look, if I was at midfield, I would have been hyped. No lie. I would have been like, yeah, F the chain. I want the ring. But listen, I would have had my tail tucked between my legs shortly after that kick to start the game because Miami came out to play, to kick ass and take names, and we all remember the results. So, but yeah, that guy's leading Notre Dame out of the tunnel at the same stadium that got his ass kicked a few years ago, 5 years ago to be exact. He's the head coach, all right? Remember Jess Simpson, Miami's D-line coach? Twice in the past couple years, he was a D-line coach. After Craig Kulugowski left, Mark Richt hired him. He went back to the NFL because, he was with the Falcons for a little bit. Back to the NFL. And then Manny brought him back when Manny was hired as the head coach. So Jess Simpson is their co-defensive coordinator / defensive line coach, all right? Coach Ishmael Aristide, my apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. He's the assistant coach / cornerbacks coach. He was here on the staff last season. Solid coach, solid recruiter, solid guy, good teacher, and a guy that relates to the players really, really well. One of those younger type coaches that can relate, go into your living room and talk to you about, outside of football. He's on their staff, and so is I forgot the crazy looking strength and conditioning coach that Miami had last year, but he's David Feely. David Feely, a lot of guys that people were crediting for the transformation that the players had throughout his time here. And look, he did his thing, but the knock on him wasn't. Don't kill the messenger. I'm just kind of reiterating what I've heard. The knock on him is he would get guys big. He would get guys big and bulky, and that was it. He wouldn't really get them in football shape, right? He would just have them built like freaking, superheroes or action figures or whatever. So that was his thing. Still, well, I think, in my opinion, one of the better strength and conditioning coordinators in college football. It brings the energy that you want. So that's Duke's coaching staff in a nutshell. Well, just familiar names that people, at least Canes fans. I'm trying to scroll here and see if there's anybody else. But in any event, again, the main thing about that offense, man, is you get eyes on that quarterback. I'm wondering how Miami's going to play that, because what do you do? What do a lot of people say when you have a mobile quarterback? Oh, spy him. Oh, spy him, yeah. But then that kind of takes somebody out of the 11 that you have on there defensively, because what happens if the quarterback just sits there and decides to become a pocket passer all game? You have one less guy on defense. He's not rushing, right? He's not in coverage. He's not, sticking to any guy coming out of the backfield. He's literally on the quarterback, and the quarterback has the ball in his hand. So if you're really going to spy someone and the quarterback's deciding to just stay in the pocket, you're kind of minusing yourself a defender, minusing a guy that can rush the quarterback. So I'm wondering how Miami's going to play. Miami's going to have to be disciplined, all right? Because any smart coach with a pulse is going to have designed running plays for a quarterback. And again, this is a guy that ran for, let me pull it up. I had it here. He ran for $130 last week against UNC. 130 yards was their leading rusher in the game, and he ran for a touchdown. This all on 14 carries. I'm sorry, but those weren't all scrambles. Again, I didn't watch the game, but you can bet your ass that some of those were designed runs. So look for that, and that hasn't necessarily been Miami's friend. Mobile quarterbacks, and not just recently, but historically, Miami has struggled with. Unless you're Virginia Tech and Michael Vick, Miami had his number for a couple of seasons there. But listen, Miami's an athletic team. And a team that's athletic defensively and uses their speed, sometimes they tend to over pursue. So you got to be disciplined. You got to know your assignments. You got to trust the guy behind you. You can't do too much, because if you do too much, you get out of your lane. That could compromise the defense behind you, and that sucks, right? But hopefully Akeem Mesidor can have a game like he did last week. Again, was awarded the Walter Camp National Player of the Year. 3.5 sacks the guy had. 3.5 sacks. Not tackles for loss. Sacks. All right. Listen, that's worthy of praise. Again, who's coaching him? Jason Taylor and Coach Rod Wright. So that's something to keep your eye on. Again, Riley Leonard also threw for 245 and a touchdown. He did throw an interception. So Miami's going to have to be on their P's and Q's, man. Tyreek Stevenson is going to be back. Okay. And so, we'll see. What does Miami have to do to win the game? I think it's simple. And when you're repeating something that has to do with being a key to victory, all right, to me, that means that it probably wasn't achieved the week before or the week before or the week before. Miami still has a problem getting off the field on third downs, even if it's something like third and obvious, all right? Even if it's something like it's third and obvious and like, okay, this team is clearly going to throw the ball because it's 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 11, all right? And Miami is still having trouble getting off the field, and that is uber frustrating as a fan. It's got to be as frustrating or more frustrating to the staff, especially if you're a coach. But you got to get off the field on third downs, okay? All right? I think starting fast is going to be huge, because starting fast and getting up ahead soon, Miami, I think, for the first time in a game that actually really, really mattered, because, yes, they were up ahead against Bethune, or they were up early against Southern Miss, but you expect that. But it's ACC play now. Like, this is it. It's like the tournament, okay? So you got to get ahead. I'm tired of Miami playing from behind. I know you are too. Because they're a different team when they're playing ahead. I get it. Virginia Tech was Virginia Tech, and they stuck. But look, it's a Power 5 school. It's an ACC school. They got 1-3 now, in the conference. But, they had a ACC win entering the game, and they're 2-5 overall. They're also in a first-year transition with coaching staffs and everything like that. So, in my opinion, the playing field was somewhat even. Yes, Miami had more talent, but I don't give a damn. All right. Like I said, talent doesn't always win games, but starting fast, getting your ass off the field on third downs, that's a must. I would love to see more balance on the offense, right? But it's kind of those things as you go with the ebbs and flows of the game, that if, damn it, we're having trouble running the ball, I really, really want to run the ball, but damn it, Tyler's hot. And that was what happened against UNC. We can go ahead and roll the tape. Actually, we don't have the clip available, but you can go ahead and listen to the episode when we were talking about the UNC game last week. That's what happened with the offense. It was like, you know what? We want to run the ball, but, Tyler's on a hot streak. Let's just go. And he threw 57 times. So I don't know if that was necessarily the case last week, because Miami did eclipse the 100-yard mark. They ran for 107, but they did it on 3.8 yards a carry. All right. There were 1, 2, 3. There were 4 guys with in the 20s in terms of rushing yards. 22 for Ja'Curry Brown. That's going to be a guy to keep your eye out on, and I'm going to tell you why. Ja'Curry Brown had 22. Lucius Stanley had 23. Dad Franklin had 24. And Jalen Knighton had 27. That sucks. That just sucks overall, because we know the talent that's in that room. Again, a lot of that has to do with the offensive line, and we know that Ja'Kai Clark's going to be back, so there will be no Jonathan Dennis starting. He's going to be back. Expect Logan Sagapolo to start again on that right guard position. So from left to right, if my memory serves me right, it's going to be John Campbell, who's been holding it down at that left tackle spot. He really has, in the absence of Zion Nelson. Okay, so from left to right, you got 74 John Campbell. To his right at the left guard, you're going to have Jalen Rivers, who is probably Miami's best offense, at least most talented offensive lineman and most consistent offensive lineman. At the center, number 53, you're going to have Ja'Kai Clark. At right guard, you're going to have Logan Sagapolo, the transfer from Oregon. And then right tackle, you're probably going to have probably Scaife, probably Deloney Scaife. We'll see, because in a perfect world, that would have been Zion Nelson starting at the right tackle position, because at this point, yes, he's been playing left tackle his entire career, but you don't want to mess with how John Campbell's been looking. He's been looking solid. He's been looking really, really good, right? I'm not saying he's looked perfect, but he's looked better than I thought. He's looked a lot better than I thought, because he was one of those guys that I wasn't ready to give up on him. I was not ready to give up on him, but I thought that, okay, at one point I was thinking, okay, let's see what else we got, right? But he's shutting me up, and thank you. I think as a Hurricanes fan, everybody that you're doubting, you don't want to be right, do you? You want to be proven wrong, and he's shutting my ass up, because he's a guy that I was high on coming out of Orlando. He was a guy that was highly coveted coming out of Orlando. I think the Gators had an eye on him, and Miami won that battle. But that's why if Zion Nelson was healthy, he'd be playing the right tackle position over Scaife. I don't know that if he was healthy and he will be starting at right tackle, if Scaife would be moved inside, or if they would have kept Justice Oluwaseun, who has been starting at right guard the entire season. I don't know. To me, Scaife is more of a guard than he is a tackle, but I'm no coach. I'm not there every day to see what they see. That's just my observation. And again, you're listening to I almost said the Michael McCoy Show. This is not my show. This is the Hurricanes Watch, and I'm your host, Mike McCoy, on the 305 Sports Network, powered by Big O. Again, Sean and Chad holding it down in the background. I apologize. Had Levon Ponder, former Miami Hurricane safety, number 35, that was here from, 04 to 07? Almost had him scheduled. And we love to have a former player on here every week. This is the first time that we don't have. Actually, it's not the first time we don't have a former player on, because we had Frank Fort on last week. Super shout out to Frank again. That guy is awesome. Frank Fort, you guys know the name. If you guys remember, he was calling Miami Hurricanes games from like 06 to 2000. I'm sorry, from 96 to 06. Called that 98 comeback versus UCLA. Guy was made to do this. Guy was made to broadcast football games, because he just has that majestic voice, that Keith Jackson voice, one of those voices that you'll never forget. He joined us last week. He's over doing FAU football right now, but that was the first time that we had a non-former football player join us. So he was a pleasure to speak to last week. And like I said, we had Levon Ponder scheduled, but things happen. So hopefully he'll get to join us next week. But I promise I'll make it up. We'll definitely have a former player on with us next week. But talk about Ja'Cory Brown. So last week, obviously, didn't throw the ball, but he did have 2 carries for 22 yards. His longest was 19, and obviously then a 4-yard carry. So why is he a weapon? Do you guys think that a 2-quarterback system is terrible? Do you guys really think that? And I'm not advocating for a 2-quarterback system, because he's not even the backup quarterback. Jake Garcia is, and Jake Garcia is a hell of a player. And Jake Garcia is going to be a hell of a player when his time is up. All right. Why? Because the dude is not scared. The dude has a pair on him, and he's a gunslinger. Think Brock Berlin when you think Jake Garcia. I'm serious. Not that Jake Garcia is going to have to throw an interception to get things right, because that's what it seemed like for Brock Berlin. It seemed like he needed to throw that interception, get that interception out of the way, and then it was like, all right, I'm ready. But we all know that Brock operated out of the shotgun like a magician, okay? And Jake, he's mobile. He's a vocal leader, and the guy's just a gunslinger. If he thinks he could get that ball between 2 defenders, he's gonna try it. And that's good and bad, give and take. But hey, he's good enough to play D1 football, and Miami was not the only one after his services. Okay. But I want to talk about Ja'Cory Brown, and I want to talk about a 2-quarterback system, because, again, not that I'm advocating for it, because I am not. But remember when the Gators won in 08 and they had, I don't know, Tim Tebow and Chris Leak as quarterbacks? They had a perfect situation. You had your passer between the 20s, you get in the red zone, and then you'd bring out your Tonka truck and Tim Tebow, your fullback / H-back / tight end, who happened to throw the ball, all right? Because that's what he was. We all saw in the NFL. The guy was a terrible quarterback, great football player, great college football player, terrible passer, not a good quarterback. And I'm just kind of thinking if maybe Miami can do that. Do I think it'll be predictable? Yes and no, because I promise you. And listen, if I'm thinking this, there's no way in hell that Josh Gaddis isn't thinking this. But every time you get in the game, the defense is probably thinking, hey, number 11, he's going to run the ball. Number 11 is going to run the ball, right? Soon enough, 11's going to get in there. They're going to think he's going to run the ball. And what the hell's going to happen? There's going to be a big player waiting for him to pass it. And I'm sure that they're waiting for the right time to spring that. FSU, maybe? Who knows? FSU's coming to town, I think, in November. They're Miami's homecoming game this year. I'm hoping that they win the rest of their games until they come to town. I'm hoping that Miami wins the rest of its games until FSU comes to town because, again, it's homecoming, and hopefully it's not a 12:30 kickoff. But in any event, that's what time this week's game is. I'm going to have to be at walk-ons. The crew is going to have to be at walk-ons at 10:30. Come out and join us if you guys can. Walk-ons on Kendall Drive. We're going to be having the 2-hour pre-game at 10:30, kicking off at 10:30. You won't be able to go inside, but you'll be able to go inside when the doors open, I think at 11 o'clock. So we'll be there, and then we're going to have the 2-hour post-game or however long the post-game takes immediately after the clock strikes 0. We'll be on air. But I want to get back to Ja'Carry Brown. I think Miami can do something like that, okay? I think you saw what he looked like when he ran the ball. That guy doesn't look like a quarterback. That guy looks like a bodybuilder. He's huge. He's ripped. He's jacked. And he's a weapon, okay? So, listen, I think it's okay. I mean, what do you guys think in the chat about having a package like that, right? A Ja'Carry package, and again, he's a quarterback, so he's not inept at throwing the football. But you maybe don't want him to do that full-fledged right now at this point of in his career. But I think that's something that the coaching staff should be looking at. Maybe they are. I'm sure they are, because like I said, if I'm sitting here watching the games and I've never held a clipboard on a college football sideline ever in my life, they got to be thinking about it. But Ja'Carry looked good in his role. He looked great in his role. He looked elite in his role. And I'm just thinking maybe that can help the much maligned red zone offense for Miami. Yes, no, maybe. But we're running out of time here. I got to get to these real McCoys. And I promise we talk about some college football because it was a great weekend. But we're running out of time. But I definitely need to get to these real McCoys. So we're going to do that right now. An exciting week of college football. And after the game finished, after the broadcast ended, I stuck around at walk-ons. Guys, if you've never been there, it's like a sports fan's heaven, right? Go there with a bunch of, a couple of your buddies. If you're fortunate enough to have a significant other that loves sports, take her too, because they got great food, they got great drinks, and they got like a million TVs. So in any event, here are the real McCoys, and here we go.
We're holstered and ready to unleash this week's Real McCoys. Time to hand out awards for this week's MVPs for the Miami Hurricanes. The Real McCoys.
All right. The third place Real McCoy, I'm going to get to it real quick because I try to be fair. I think I've been fair because I don't think I've had that many Miami Hurricanes in the past couple of weeks. We haven't deserved it. I know I did hand it out to Tyler Van Dyke when he had that monster performance against UNC. He passed for the second most yards in a single game in Miami Hurricanes history. I believe the first place quarterback to hold the most passing yards in a game, I believe that's Stephen Morris, if my memory serves me right. He did that in a game versus NC State several years ago. But in any event, the third place Real McCoy, I have a tie. They're going to be Miami Hurricanes, but I got to give it up to Colby Young. 9 catches, 110 yards, a touchdown, long of 37 yards, excuse me, a highlight reel one-handed catch. I should have had that for the guys to play, and I apologize, but you guys saw it. Brought it in like he's been doing it, like if he was meant to do it. So Colby Young tied with Tyler Van Dyke, who went 29 of 46 for 351, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Those two are the third place Real McCoy.
Real McCoy.
Second place Real McCoy. Again, it was an awesome week of college football, and the next two are not going to be Miami Hurricanes players, and they're not going to be Virginia Tech players. They're not going to be Duke Blue Devil players. They're going to be It's gonna be like a collective. It's gonna be like a collective. Did you guys keep an eye, or even if you didn't watch the whole game, as long as you watched the fourth quarter, holy cow, holy cow, that Tennessee Alabama game. Listen, I'm one of those guys that hates when people say, "Oh, SEC football, there's nothing like it." Da, 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 da. Shut the hell up. Just shush. All right. But that that Tennessee Alabama game, it was everything that you love about college football. Neyland Stadium was filled to the brim, guys. Perfect weather, perfect setting for football. It was just awesome. There was a moment that they were coming back from a commercial break, and they had one of the cameras that was situated towards the top of the stadium, and you got to see the entire stadium, all of Neyland Stadium, right? And then it just had the backdrop of like the sun was going down. It was perfect. It was perfect. That's college football. That is college football. There was another big game, and we'll talk about that later. But the second place Real McCoy is not going to the Tennessee Volunteers. It's not going to anybody on Alabama's sideline. Did you guys see what they did after the game? They tore down the goalpost and they threw it in the Tennessee River. I don't know how they got it out of the stadium, but they threw it in the river. So the third place Real McCoy goes to the student section, and whoever the hell was responsible, maybe everybody was. I saw older fans, younger fans. The majority were students, but the Tennessee fans that had everything and anything to do with throwing that goalpost in the Tennessee River, those guys get the second place Real McCoy.
Real McCoy.
And the first place Real McCoy, the other game, and I can't believe this is a 12 o'clock kickoff. I really cannot believe it was a 12 o'clock kickoff because, like, what the hell is going on? It was a top 10 matchup. You had number 10 Penn State traveling to the Big House to play the number 5 Michigan Wolverines, your classic Big Ten, rock 'em, sock 'em, knock 'em out, drag 'em out type of game. And only one team showed up to play rock 'em, sock 'em type football. And it was funny to see. Why was it funny to see? You guys know who Penn State's defensive coordinator is, right? Yeah, and look, I was one of those guys that stuck with Manny Diaz to the end. When everybody was done with him, I wasn't, because I just wasn't. Until I started hearing things that I could not defend as a fan, and these weren't things that went on in the field. The guy did some things that he really shouldn't have said, shouldn't have done. Recruiting wise, it was a mess, even though he brought in some nice classes. If you guys think that the classes that Manny brought in were nice, I don't want to tell you the stories that would have made them nicer, because anyway, the first place Real McCoy goes to the Michigan Wolverines rushing attack. Why? Did you guys see what they did? Did you see what they did against that Penn State defense? All they did as a team and individually, I'm going to get into that stat, but as a team, you ready for this? The Michigan Wolverines rolled up a whopping 418 yards of rushing yards on the ground versus a Penn State, then number 10 ranked Penn State defense. They scored 41 points to Penn State's 17. Okay, and of that 418 yards of offense, they had not one, but two guys run over 200 yards. All right. Everybody knows about Blake Corum, their leading rusher, their best rusher, number 1 running back on the team. 28 carries for 100. I'm sorry, they didn't go over 200 yards. They both went over 160. So 28 carries for Blake Corum, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. His backup, Donovan Edwards, ran for 173 yards on only 16 carries, 10.8 yards a pop. It's embarrassing. You want to know what it reminds me of? That UNC game a couple years ago that UNC ran for like 500 yards on the ground, okay? And both of those running backs, Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum, scored 2 touchdowns. So they could have beat them with just those stats alone. They would have beat them 28-17. So shout out to the Michigan rushing attack for running for a grand total of 418 yards and 4 touchdowns. They get their first place Real McCoy.
Real McCoy.
And that's pretty much it. I did kind of get into the week of college football. There were a bunch of games, man, that were just they were awesome. I talked about the Alabama game, went down to the wire. The the Michigan game. That was a top 10 match. So 2 top 10 matchups. You know, you had FSU play Clemson. FSU's lost 3 in a row. All of a sudden, everybody's thinking that well, not everybody, but FSU fans thinking they have turned the corner. But anybody that knew anything about anything knew otherwise, right? So they're coming back down to earth. The Gators lost against LSU, I believe it was. And what else? Notre Dame lost, I think, to Stanford, which is crazy. Yeah, it would have been a perfect weekend did Ohio State play? I don't think they played. I don't think Ohio State played. But if they would have played and lost, that would have been like their perfect weekend. But in any event, guys, I'm out of time. We're over time, and I apologize again for not having a guest. He was scheduled. He confirmed with me. I'm glad I didn't tweet it out. But hopefully LeVon Parner will join us next week. If not, a time whenever he's ready. But I promise I will have another former player, maybe current player, who knows, join us next week. But thanks for joining us again. Hope to see you on Saturday. Come out to Walk-Ons on Kendall Drive. The broadcast will start at 10:30 in the morning. Again, 2 hours before kickoff. That's when myself, Chad, Stan get things rolling. We'll be on through kickoff at 12:30. Then right when the clock strikes 0, we will start the post-game show. I think Manny Navarro is going to join us. And that'll be it. So hope to see you guys on Saturday. Go Canes. You're going to ask me for a prediction. You know what? I'll save it for the pregame show. So I'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in to the Miami Hurricanes Watch on the 305 Sports Talk Network. See you next week.
You've been listening to the Miami Hurricanes Watch with host Mike McCoy on the Sports Talk 305 Network. The Watch is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Shobe. Please subscribe to the Big O Radio Show on most platforms. Thank you for supporting the Miami Hurricanes Watch. Have a great night, Canes fans.